I'm back. I'm going to chat a little bit about V6. I'm not going to get too far into the weeds on it. I think I'm going to chat about just some design choices here and there, and then look at some like system stuff and that kind of thing. Get a big close look at my face. All right. Um, yeah, and I put these all on YouTube, so feel free to go over there at Moon RPGs. Yeah, if you're watching this, like and subscribe and all that stuff. Let's see. So, personal news wise, I just finished a big personal project I've been working on for a while, so that's good. It's not vampire related, it's completely separate. Um, with the guys at Plus One RPGs. So I'm waiting to hear back on that and see what the next steps are for that. And also, I've been interviewing for this position in the TRPG space, and so I'm in the next steps for that. I just found out the other day. So all good news there. I mean, unless you want me to write more vampire stuff, then potentially bad news, because then I wouldn't be able to work on vampire stuff. So it is what it is. Support me where you can, and hopefully, I will have enough time before they make any final decisions to make some progress on some vampire stuff. Now that that project I was talking about is out of the way, I can concentrate on another book. We'll see which one that'll be. I have to talk to some co-authors and stuff and see what their scheduling is like, so I can figure that out. Whether it's going to be the Ivory Tower, it's going to be able to get the benefit of the time I have, or one of the other two books that I'm kind of in development for the Storyteller's Vault. Um, Either way, nothing's a done deal. I'm sure I could, flunk the interview, and then, what else do I have to do but write for Vampire, basically. But in any case, let's talk about V6. So let's pop open the book here. This is the V6 player packet play test. You can get it on the Storyteller's Vault, aka Drive Through RPG. I think that's really the easiest place to download it. Inside, you can also link to the long form or short form feedback packet, which I think everybody should do. If you have any interest in Vampire, even if you're just playing V5 or V20, I think you should let your opinion be heard, so that the next iteration of Vampire is as good as it could possibly be. Um, and yeah, that's that. All right. So last time, I'm actually in the wrong spot here. Last time I was talking about clans, and some of the choices for clans. I'm not going to dig into this. I mean, the clans are the clans. It doesn't look like they really effed with the clans in any meaningful way. These are the clans we know from Vampire the Masquerade from back in the day. The only real kind of meaningful changes overall is as I said before, you kind of have this like reset to V20 happening in the lore, with V5 kind of being acknowledged that all the lore changes in V5 happened. At least in this playtest, we'll see what the actual book would say. But the broad strokes seem to be V5, the Beckoning happened, the Gehenna War happened, all this stuff happened, but that's all been resolved. And now the outcome of all that is the way things started. So it's kind of like a serpent eating its tail in Ouroboros. All those changes, in a sense, didn't matter since they led us back to where we came from. Like, the only lasting meaningful change seems to be that the Setites are now called Ministry. They're sticking to the name change for some reason, even though that's, honestly the weirdest name change. And Salubri are kind of recognized as a clan, again. which is also strange. A strange change because V5 really didn't give a lore reason for that. What V5 kind of did, and it did this a bit with Ravnos too, is it glossed over all the lore for Salubri. Like, it really didn't even talk about the fact that the Tremere were hunting them, or why, or any of that stuff. That was kind of not really written in the game at all. There's only bits and pieces written to it. In fact, if you look through Gehenna War, the only real mention of the Tremere-Salubri rivalry issues, traumatic genocide, is in the Sabbat section, which of course is taken from the Black Hand playing the Sabbat in that book, and credited in the Gehenna War book as well for that. So it is kind of strange that basically before that, what happened to the Salubri or who was responsible was mostly kind of lost in this fog of war, which I did not mind from a player-facing aspect on some level, but you're kind of missing out on the dramatic meat of the Salubri if you can't talk about their backstory and the trauma that the clan kind of lived under, and how they survived, which of course they kind of freely practiced diablerie within the clan, sires being dabrized by Childer and the such, as a well-established practice within the clan that most vampires found very off-putting, to the point where when the Tremere began to destroy them, although not many other clans rose to their defense. And that's a whole other thing about what clans and all that. And on some level, I don't mind that, because I liked getting away from the kind of corporatization or Tremerification of all the clans, where every clan is a monolith and every clan is super organized and every clan basically is a corporate entity. I did not like that personally. It led to a lot of weird stuff, and it made the lore very stagnant, stultifying, and not as interesting as it could be. So on some level, I didn't mind it, but on another level, it is strange to continue kind of, failing to talk about the Salubri and the Ravnos in a way that really delves into, the interesting aspects of what they've been through. With the Ravnos, obviously, they'd been just so poorly written over and over again. And at one point, of course, they really dove into the Ravnos' kind of Southwest Asian origins, their kind of pre-Wanderer existence. So kind of the origins of the Romani, in a sense. I don't know if that was the right way to go, because it really tied the clan to one cultural identifier in a way that I think made them less interesting overall, and really didn't talk about archetypes in any way, and in some ways kind of further racialized the clan, which I also don't think is a great way to go. I think racialization of clans in general is bad and shouldn't be done. If you're going to appropriate things from cultures and make them part of a clan culture, I think that's fine. I think you just have to acknowledge that it is appropriation. And these are vampires, so they're going to appropriate things from mortal culture. Very few vampires have their own vampiric culture that isn't some kind of evolution of mortal culture. That's kind of one of the interesting aspects of playing Sabbat in Vampire the Masquerade, is that Sabbat is really the only kind of post-human vampiric society, a society of vampires that are really trying to get away from their humanity in all senses of the word, not just their humanity as a belief system, but their humanity as the core concept of their identity. They wish to be vampires, and they're exploring what it means to be a vampire, divorced from your human past and human identity. And of course, the Anarchs, in some ways, are kind of the reverse of that. They're vampires who kind of reject all the trappings and tropes of the stultified vampiric society that the Camarilla represents, and are basically trying to inject mortal politics and mortal and new ideas that obviously come from the mortal world into vampiric unlife. So the Anarchs are kind of the other end of the spectrum. So that's really how I see it, is the Camarilla kind of this status quo stultifying power that it's really the only job of the Camarilla is to make sure that all the benefits of vampiric society and vampiric unlife accrue to the power elite, which are basically the elders. And so everything the Camarilla does is in service to basically the elders getting this pain-free, consequence-free unlife. Basically a golden unlife. And that's basically everything it does is in service to that. And then things make a lot more sense. Why princes work, act like prison wardens. It's because the people they're answering to are these elders who can basically remove them almost on a whim. So that is a whole other part of the fun. And so the Sabbat and the Anarchs kind of are on either side of the Camarilla on the spectrum. One leaning a lot more into this like mortal identity, and then the Sabbat obviously leaning into a post-human, post-mortal vampiric identity. So the Ravnos Salubri, to make them kind of more interesting again, I think you will have to address their backstory and background in an interesting way, and I think there are ways to do that. And on some level, I think that's because Salubri is actually somewhat a popular clan. There are people who are just like Salubri diehards who love to play Salubri, and it's not an insignificant portion of the player base, I guess. From stuff I've seen, popular clans include Zemisei, which really shocked me. I had no idea I was such a basic bitch. I love Zemisei, and I thought that made me special, but I guess not. I guess they're a popular clan. Who knew? Who knew? That's not my experience at all. But I will say they are often overrepresented in LARP. Zemisei and Salubri are very overrepresented in LARP, I found. And so maybe that is a significant... Oh, I see my new cat has decided to grace us with her presence. There she is, showcasing the Black Hand playing the Sabbat, of course. Nibbling on her toes. She is a princess, so I'm sure... so try not to get too distracted, like I am, by her antics back there. Though if that makes you watch the video longer, then fine, stare at the cat. I can't, I'm not going to kink shame you. But nevertheless, so Zemisei, La Sombra, these are Tremere. These are all clans that are very well liked, and the player base, wants to see them front and center, I guess, on some levels. So I don't think that really impacted the design choices here too much. Though I will say the likelihood that someone in the development team for V6 like Salubri is probably pretty high. They're listed amongst the clans. They've changed the traditional 13 clan wording to 14 clans, which is very strange. As I've said before, just say 13 clans and then write as many as you want. Have like 23 up there and then just keep saying 13 clans just to fuck with people. I think that's great. I think that's really interesting and fun. That you can just clearly see there are a lot more than 13 clans, but everybody just says 13 clans. And I think that's, why explain it? Forget it. Just move on. No bother explaining. Right? Like, we don't explain who's been hunting the Salubri for all these centuries, so why explain that, right? So, overall, I'm pretty happy with the clans they have here. there's some interesting choices that they didn't want to include certain clans in the playtest. Zemisei, Malkavian, Ravnos. I could see why they don't want to include those in the playtest because they have certain backgrounds, rules, power sets that some people could get very hung up on if they're not written well. So those probably require extra care. And if you're doing an alpha playtest, then yeah, go with the easy stuff first in some level. Same with the Tremere. Caitiff, we don't really see how they'll work. I suspect that's going to get changed at the end. 3 randomly determined disciplines sounds fun on paper, but really is not. Is not. It's just not fun. Like, having 3 random disciplines, clan disciplines, is just not... I don't think that's a way... I don't think we should do that, basically. Maybe 1 random dot would be interesting, but all 3 being random is not interesting. And it really goes against the whole concept of Caitiff as it is. So the Caitiff is kind of the customizable outsider. So the randomness really doesn't seem to make sense, especially with the way Duskborn is, and we'll get there. All right, so Sire and Generation. This is interesting, as I've spoken about before. I think it leans too much into how important the Sire is. I understand as a player, some players really like to lean into their Sire backstory to kind of make sense of why they were turned into a vampire, but not all players do. In fact, I'd say the majority of players give 0 thought to their Sire, while this seems to be a real right turn. So now Sire is front and center in character creation, and basically makes a whole host of potential NPCs that are kind of onto the storyteller and the player. So what I would say is one thing that V6 didn't really balance well, even though mechanically it was fantastic, Touchstone and Convictions, okay? So Touchstone and Convictions worked well together, were incredible. Basically the best humanity system Vampire the Masquerade has ever had. And I'll repeat that again and again. Vampire the Masquerade mechanically for basically 30 years was tired, like dog tired. It was basically Shadowrun with D10. Okay, so it was a 30-year-old system that had basically borrowed its system from a 10-year-old game. Okay, so you're using a rule set that was basically developed in the 80s. They just went from D6 to D10. And made no real meaningful changes other than the old humanity system with the hierarchy of sins and all that, and the virtues. And that was a terrible bolted-on system that mechanically was bankrupt and dog shit. And by V20, they'd kind of taped up all the cracks, fixed all the leaking radiators, and it ran okay. I would say that Chronicles of Darkness, what was called New World of Darkness, mechanically is a much better, more streamlined system. I would say V6 is clearly borrowing a lot from the kind of concepts in Requiem, if not the dice system itself. Like the difficulty has gone up to 8. The standard success number has gone up to 8 in V6, and all difficulty is subtraction of dice as opposed to iterative successes. So that's basically Requiem, right? That's Requiem in a nutshell. So the role is very Requiem-esque, though they didn't take a lot of other things. But anyway, Touchstone's Convictions were great, except there was one drawback, which was all the touchstones. So if you had 5 vampires at your table, that's potentially 15 NPCs, 3 touchstones per PC. It's potentially 15 NPCs you basically just added to your game. So that was a little iffy. It was a little iffy. Most players, I've noticed, basically ignore touchstones unless the storyteller front and centers them, or they need something, or they have some kind of mechanical benefit for messing with their touchstones, right? So that was kind of iffy, but it also pointed to V5 being much more human-centric or mortal-centric than any other version of Vampire. V5 was very much about you going out into the world and fucking with humans and mortals, right? Like Vampire Society had kind of crumbled, the bosses are away, all that. So, and now you have all these touchstones. So messing with Mortal Society was much more the focus of V5 games. So V6 kind of, getting rid of Conviction's touchstones as a consequence and replacing it with this really subpar humanity system they have here. But I'll talk about that later. So now they've replaced that touchstone conviction as part of your character creation is gone, and now they've added Sire. So it's much more leaning back into this is a game about vampires dealing with other vampires and vampire problems, and they have vampire jobs, and so on and so forth. So it's vampires and vampires and vampires, and mortals are really, you don't even think about mortals. They're basically, they're like a Slurpee. You just grab and go. Just grab and go. Check the boxes on your Vitae and then move on. So that is strange. A strange way to go when Vampire, it's been traditionally kind of this bite and cry game. Not my preference. And they're leaning very much into what I would call like the heroes with capes kind of tropes. I would say that's most put forward by the alpha playtest adventure, which is basically almost no mortals meaningfully involved. All the mortals in the adventure are basically like people who've been kidnapped or killed or anything like that, and then you can kill them. They don't even need names. All right, who they are, what they're about, completely absent. Right, and the problem is a vampire problem. A vampire has created a problem, and you fight vampires. Right, you don't fight mortals or some other supernatural. So it's a problem created by a vampire. You fight vampires, and then at the end you answer to some vampires. So it's basically you don't even have to have a conversation with anybody but vampires in that entire playtest. The only words that might come out of the NPC mortal's mouth is like "please help me" or "oh my god" or "scream," and that's that. Because they're basically just like tied up victims. So that's strange. It's kind of excluding the mortal from vampire is a little strange for the base game. Maybe in a Sabbat game, I could see that. So for Camarilla play, that's not that big of a deal. For Anarch play or like low level play, that's a little strange. But we'll see. So anyway, making sires front and center. I don't think this is a great idea. I think choosing your sire and it being like an optional step could be cool. If like the default was like say unknown sire, I think that would be great. That doesn't really work here because unknown sire gives a very basic bitch advantage. I would basically say 1 dot in 1 discipline of your choice. Just do that, and then basically everybody can just go for unknown and move on. I heard some people complain that, it's, leaning into bad tropes about trauma. If the, like, cruel sire gives you cool powers, right? And, or the manipulative sire gives you cool powers or whatever. I mean, they both give you dominate and then 2 other potential powers. So, I mean, that kind of tracks. I don't really think that is a meaningful critique in any way. This is Vampire. You could have been embraced against your will. All right? Like, I would say the nature of your embrace would be a more interesting concept to explore than the type of sire, right? So the nature of your embrace, were you embraced willingly? Were you... and that might be completely divorced from your sire, right? You could have been embraced willingly, right? And then your sire while you were in your fledgling phase, basically was cruel, right? Like you agreed to become a vampire, but then the shine kind of wore off you. This is kind of the classic Toreador backstory, right? Is you're willingly embraced by a vampire, kind of sweeps you up off your feet. You're in that NRE, that new relationship energy kind of stage, and you're like, yes, take me, I'll be yours forever. And they're like a Toreador, so they're totally entranced with you. And then they embrace you, and that thing that made you like special, unique, and interesting to them is gone, right? I mean, and this is also kind of the basically the plot of Interview with the Vampire. You know, spoilers. So the embracing you, which was the thing that was supposed to connect you and bring you together, and then bringing you into their world, is also what drives you apart, right? So that could be interesting. You know, you're willingly embraced with a cruel sire. So the nature of your embrace could be a more interesting way to do this, as opposed to just pick how your sire was like. So if you're gonna do this, my suggestion would basically to have a little like I mean, Vampire the Masquerade's Bloodline 1 did this with the patch. Actually, it was in the original game. It was actually removed from the original game, where you ask a series of questions about how you tackle problems, and it builds your character. Right? Our book from the Black Hand playing the Sabbat, The Adventure, Our Graves Are Empty. You can find that on the Storyteller's Vault. It builds characters in the first scene. In the first scene, I don't want to spoil things, but in the first scene, basically, you awaken as a vampire, and the choices you make in that scene, and some choices that are made for you, unfortunately, the choices that you make in that scene help you build your character at the table as a group. And I've run at a convention several times. It always goes over really well. So having a more narrative character creation system, I think, could be really interesting here. You would have to just break it up a little more. This one question about your sire, I feel, kind of misses the point. If you're going to do... I wouldn't do this. I think you should have two options. A narrative character creation option that asks you, like, certain questions that helps you build your character over, like, I'd say 3-4 steps, 5 steps max. Basically, if it can't fit on 2 pages, don't do it when it comes to character creation. That's just a hard, fast rule I live by, and so far it's worked out great. Check out the Vampire Player's Guide, the V5 official one. Look in the Black Handbook. Both books have a 2-page character creator. And of course, the VPG has my instant vampire system, where you basically just draw from a tarot deck and build a character. So I wouldn't do this. I would either basically, make a point buy system, boom, 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 you're done. Make 3 choices and you're finished. Or a more granular narrative thing, basically like the nature of, who are you when you're mortal, the nature of your embrace, what type of sire did you have, and basically what is your unlife like now, and then maybe a final 5th question about basically your coterie. All right, like that should be the final question. Should be the coterie. So yeah, this is interesting. It basically lets you get a discipline based on the type of sire you have, which is kind of cool. I would say adoptive sire could be really cool, and I suspect adoptive sire will be very popular. Like, basically, my adoptive sire is a Tremere. My adoptive sire is a Zemese. My adoptive sire is a member of the Ministry, or a La Sombra. Right? So it's a very easy way to get a touch or a flavor of the weirder powers and very interesting. Same with Broodchild. Alright, 1 discipline from a Broodmate's clan. So that needs some explanation. I, as a old school vampire player, have an understanding of what this means, but just reading it, it's kind of muddled. You were raised in a brood of vampires, either created by the same sire or different ones. Okay? From your first awakening, you learned how to work as a team and how to fight for resources. Most of your broodmates didn't survive, but you've proved to be strong. 1 dot in a discipline from a broodmate's clan. So you were raised in a brood of vampires that were from different clans. That's very strange. Usually a brood, the way it's usually used, the term brood, is a group of vampires who were all created from the same sire. Right? So that would be weird. If you had a broodmate who was from a different clan than the rest of the brood, that would be an adoptive child. So they would have had an adoptive sire. So that's a little weird. That's a little muddled, like a lore question here, but whatever. It doesn't really matter. And if you're going to do this, you either need fewer or more sire types. I would probably go with fewer and a more narrative, granule character creation. The way this works, it just gives you a discipline dot. You could very easily put in embrace type and all that. All right, generation has been abstracted yet again. So like each version of Vampire the Masquerade seems to abstract generation more and more each time. It's a little weird, but you know, I guess I'm not complaining about it. I think the way I would go. Well, let's take a look at it before I talk about what I would do. I think that's fair. All right. So looking at generation, it's basically the tiers of play, and it's broken down a little bit more. I get it. I would say the issue I have here is yet again, it's linking generation and age in a way without really breaking that down enough for me, for my tastes. Duskborn are a little weird here yet again. They're basically kind of eschewing thin blood altogether as a term, and just calling them Duskborn, and it's a little strange because traditionally Duskborn or Thin Bloods are basically caitiffs whose vampiric blood is so weak they don't have even some vampire curses, let alone the powers. They have very few powers. In this iteration, it seems Duskborn are just low-gen vampires who have a clan. So you can be Duskborn and be a veteran. That's a little weird. I don't know. That is not quite the way I would do it. It doesn't, and it kind of takes away one of the most interesting things about Thin Bloods, which was when you, in V5, if you dauberize, a Thin Blood who dauberizes a clan vampire gains that vampire's clan. Yeah, baby, you're meowing? Okay. As I said, I got a new cat, and she's very sweet. Yeah? Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes. She doesn't really like to be picked up though, so I can't show you guys how sweet she is, but she's a perfect baby. So, as I was saying, this is a little weird. Generation modifier is linked to the categories, and my understanding is if you dauberize, so if you start as a 11th gen neonate, which is a choice you can just make in character, and you dauberize once to 10th gen, you immediately get a +2 generation modifier, which is pretty significant. I can go over what that does. So that is a design decision that I don't think is good. If you're going to link this generation modifier just to the gen number, if you're going to toss blood potency, there's a reason blood potency was created systemically. I don't think its implementation was great. It was just too many numbers doing too many things. Its implementation wasn't great, but it was there for a reason. And that reason was basically Diablerie and the power fantasy. Because basically the power of the blood making you a more powerful, unstoppable vampire just doing vampire stuff. Like punching people with your fists and not having potence to like lift up a car, that kind of thing. So I don't think that's not fully cooked. That needs to go back in the oven. The simplicity of it is nice, but the way for it to get broken is also problematic, and it is basically where a narrative choice, what gen are you, crosses over into mechanical consequences. If you choose 13th gen neonate, you will have to Dauberize 3 times to get the same effect as an 11th gen neonate, right? An 11th gen neonate who Dauberizes 3 times, all right, is going to be 8th gen, which is a whole other level of crazy in this system, okay? So also Daubery is very easy and kind of consequence free. In the playtest, you can basically you can kind of Dauberize, I think, 3 times without too much of an issue. Sorry, you have the opportunity basically to Dauberize 3 times, 4 times if you want to eat the the hound, the sheriff's man. But of course, the consequences would be narrative, but the mechanical consequences are basically unexistent. All right. So life path, that's like kind of the next step of character creation. I don't love the name, but I don't mind it, and I don't give a shit that it's called life path and you're dead. I think dead path would sound stupid, as would undead path or vampire path or whatever. So I'm okay with it. There's not really a better name I could think of. Maybe background, or maybe backstory, or journey. Who knows? But like I said, they're all shit names, so Life Path is good as any other. So Life Path is interesting. I think it has some possibility here. I think the way it's implemented here isn't the way I would do it. I don't find it great, but it's not bad. It's fine. So it's just basically giving you dots for a skill list, and you choose like a focus for skills, blah, blah, blah. I don't know why they renamed background / advantages resources. This is just a thing that vampire game developers like to do, I guess, which is just rename well-established concepts like resources, backgrounds. These are all well-established concepts. In V5, they renamed everything like advantages, which is fine on some level, but didn't work out. Like, advantages should be the top line, and then it should break down into basically backgrounds and merits, and then the individual backgrounds should basically be stuff like resources, haven, blah, 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 while, basically things that exist in this world outside of you, right? That should be backgrounds. These are things you possess, own, have a connection to, like your mentor is a background. And then merits are basically things that in some way are internalized within you, right? Like linguistic skill, some supernatural ability you have beyond what other vampires have, whether it's bloodline or whatever. And very rarely should a merit basically be some like benefit or something like that. Perhaps if it's some kind of social quasi-supernatural benefit that you get, that could potentially be it. Like if you had some kind of almost like supernatural ability to get into nightclubs, then that, I would say that would be like a merit, right? While if you own a nightclub, that would be a background, so on and so forth. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I don't understand renaming things resources is just a bad choice. It's not really a quibble. Like, it's just a bad choice. It's bad. It's not a good idea. They should change that. The resources means cash in Vampire the Masquerade. Everybody knows that. It's been that way since I was like 16 years old, and and it works, and that's what everybody believes. Kind of reinventing the wheel here is pointless. Let's see here. It would be like renaming Venture. Well, you wouldn't do that. All right, so with Life Path, I would say the funniest thing about this is that when I wrote for V5, I remember I got a note once because I was writing all these clans and stuff, and you'd have to give examples for like character types, and I got a note which was like, these sound like vampire jobs. And I was like, well, yes, some of them are vampire jobs. Like some character concepts will be vampire jobs, right? You're a vampire in this clan, and this is what you're doing as a vampire. Your vampire job. So seeing that they're vampire life paths, which are just straight up vampire jobs. Like, you know, you've got like bio waste cleanup crew guy, which is funny that you would send vampires to like clean up a murder scene. That really sounds like ghoul work to me. But now that you have kind of like, so I would actually remove that neonate tag. I would make it, I would basically make it, you know, a tier 1 tag. Like that, like cleanup crew should definitely, and why couldn't an Ancilla be in charge of a cleanup crew, like the cleanup crew manager, right? So, I mean, it's definitely not something an elder would never do, but it's kind of funny that you're like, you know, cleaning up bloody, you know, you're basically doing Pulp Fiction. You're cleaning brains out of the car, and that's your vampire job. So that just goes to say that V5, its mortal facing kind of purview was something that really the game stuck to, and I believe it deserves some credit for that. So even when we were designing the characters from the clans from a conceptual level, when giving examples of what type of character you could build with like this clan or that clan, there was basically a directive that it shouldn't be too like vampire facing, that it should basically be an extension of that character's like mortal life as a vampire, or more of a high archetype, like Zemisei in the Companion, let's say. Okay, they have a character type called the Landlord. And landlord can mean a lot of things, right? It doesn't necessarily mean, you know, you rent and own property, right? Like you have some ownership of some physical space that you consider like yours. You own it, and like what comes with that is very interesting. It's not really a vampire job, though it could be if worded in a certain way. It is not in the Companion. So it's funny to see like literal vampire jobs as part of the character creation, and it shows the narrative shift of focus from V5's mortal facing game to V6's in, you know, vampire world. So V6 is very clearly interested in vampire world, and your games are going to be assumed to revolve around vampire world. So that's kind of interesting, and that's just what I'm picking up from the player packet. Like, this is without any like lore drops or anything like that. So this is all fine. This is nothing, you know, doesn't really blow me away. This could all be optional. This really kind of seems more as an optional thing. Like, they don't do anything special, right? Like, let's look at Harpy, okay, or Sheriff, okay. So you were a sheriff once. What does that do for you? Well, it gives you a grab bag of skills that you can put dots into. Okay, most of these I agree with. They're kind of a bit too investigative, which is a little weird. They're kind of like almost like Columbo skills, like awareness, investigation, survival, persuasion, right? They're kind of like Columbo skills, which is a little different. Um, uh, no combat skills whatsoever. Though I'm glad that there is vampire politics as their skill set, because obviously the sheriff's a very political role. And then you get some their backgrounds that they have access to are basically allies, weapons. Okay, there's some weapons, and status. All right, so but there's nothing special. Um, so there's nothing that the fact that you were a sheriff or are a sheriff gives you in and of itself, right? It just tells you how you can distribute dots. So technically, someone could buy the exact same power set, the same resources and skills as you, and not be a sheriff. Maybe not the exact same, but nearly the same. And of course, these are all narrative, so you could pick sheriff and rename it something else. So I don't know. There's not a lot of teeth here. There are no flaws or drawbacks that come with the life paths. Like if you were a sheriff once, you probably have lots of enemies. So that's a little weird. All right, so attribute skills. I've talked about this before. The dot distribution. I mean, it's fine. Yet again, it doesn't really blow me away. There's nothing really new being done here. I like you get more life paths as you get older. I'm not quite sure why the ghoul has 2 life paths, the same as a neonate or a duskborn. I think ghoul and duskborn should probably just get 1 life path. I suspect the way they did it that way, because that way they could break out the life paths with smaller dots purchases. So it kind of makes sense. I think what I would have done is given you a default dot package to spend any way you want, and then you would layer the life path on top of that, as opposed to 2 life paths. But it doesn't really matter. Or I would give you some special benefit for picking a life path first, or a special benefit for choosing a life path as your current life path, right? So so your current life path gives you some kind of like power or boost or special ability, and your older life paths, the ones that you are no longer, that they're in your past, they just give you the skills and resources. But your current life path gives you skills, resources, and like some kind of kicker, some like little extra benefit that you can do that other people can't, which is something I'm a big fan of. Like if you take a look at oh my God, you're screaming. So like a good example is the Grim Reaper Predator type. In the Grim Reaper Predator type, it's just like all the other Predator types. It's basically, the same point spread, but it has like a little special ability that only the Grim Reaper Predator type has, which is basically you can identify what kind of diseases the mortals you're feeding off of have, just by tasting their blood. So I like those little like interesting things. They add some flavor. So I think maybe that's what I would do. This is fine. There's nothing really blowing me away here about this. Elders get a lot of discipline powers, and I noticed that vampire neonates also get 4 discipline powers. Let's see here, but not dots. Okay, so these are your dots, and these are your powers. You must have at least 1 dot on discipline. Choose a power. It must be the number of powers you can choose during character creation. All right, so I'm not 100% sure what the 3 + 1 is. Maybe that's from your sire type, is the +1. I guess that would make sense, because it's a standard +1 overall. Okay. So it looks like, I would have to take a look, but it looks like off the top of bat, a neonate vampire might be able to start with like a level 4 discipline level. It's potential, but I guess we'll see. All right, so I would say that the only thing I would say is the attribute spend. This is a recreated problem that was solved by Requiem and solved by V5, which is if you do the attribute spread this way, you will create power gaps in your party, large ones. Okay, so that 6-4-3 or 7-5-3 or whatever spread, and then you pick physical, mental, social, and you spend your 7-5-3 in one stat. If you max out a dot and leave all the others anemic, someone else in your party who doesn't do that could end up with as much, but wants that dot to be there once, because for a more balanced spread, but there's one stat they want to maximize. During the course of play, it's going to take them 15 experience points to get to the same attribute level that you have at character start. Oh my god, baby, you don't like it when I stream, do you, huh? Is that what it is? You just want attention? Oh, poor thing. All right. Well, I've been going an hour here, so maybe I'll cut it short since my new cat is desperate for attention. So that has been solved. V5 solved it with basically a attribute spread, which was like you have 4. Your highest attribute is a 4. Your lowest attribute is 1. Pick one attribute to be 4. Pick another attribute to be 1. And then like you get 3 attributes at 3, and all the rest are 2s. All right. Really elegant, simple way to do it. Solve that problem. Requiem also kind of solved it, but I think V5 is the most elegant solution. I would reinstitute that. The only difference is that for Ancilla and Elder play, maybe for Elder play, I would say, the top stat would be a 6 that you pick. So top stat is 6, and then lowest stat of 2. Right? And then for Ancilla play, top stat of 5, lowest stat still a 1. Okay? So that could be, more interesting. Well, I guess technically lowest stat would be a 2. Just looking at the spread, 8-6-4. You could have a 1. All right. So like, top stat of 5, bottom stat of 1, and then the mix of 3s and 2 in the middle would basically be near the same. And then for Elder, top stat 6, bottom stat 2s, and then the spread of 3s and 2 in the middle would basically be about the same. Maybe throw a 5 in there or something like that. So like a 6 and a 5. So you get it. There are ways to do it which prevent these kind of... and the real problem with that is it steps on power fantasy of players when their character doesn't match up with the other characters doing their best thing. So, when another character who is basically just game the dots better at character creation, they're doing their best thing way better than you are doing your best thing. And that can, that has consequences for the power fantasy of the game. This is fine. We don't have to go through this at all. Like, this is pretty standard stuff. The skills are done a little weird. I don't really have a problem with it. This is a dice pool system. Doesn't really matter. I know some people have been complaining that there are too few skills. Like, there are 13 skills instead of 26 skills. That's fine. I honestly don't give a shit. I think that's fine. The way they do it actually is kind of interesting. Every time you get an odd dot in a skill, you pick a skill focus, what we used to call specialties. And that not only kind of defines what you're doing with that skill, it gives an extra die to the test, and you can't double up on focuses / specializations, right? So some of them are a bit broad, like knowledge. Okay, like why is knowledge and medicine separated? Like if you're gonna make it knowledge, couldn't medicine be a focus in knowledge? But this is a game after all, and medicine is a very useful skill in a game, so you wouldn't want to make it so readily available to everybody just by blowing one focus right, on knowledge. Knowledge is very broad. That might need to be picked apart. But honestly, I don't give a shit. It looks fine. I like fighting as just one skill. All right, like basically punching, stabbing, kicking, knifing, swording is all one skill. That's fine. I prefer that. That's not really how the real world works. Sure, but I'm not here for simulation. Also, if this is a vampire game, I prefer the combat skill types to be minimal, right? I don't want 33 combat skills. I don't want, awareness, dodge, melee, brawl. Like, look at that. Awareness, dodge, melee, brawl, firearms, right? So that's like 5 skills right there, and they're all combat skills. All right, so if 5 of your 26 skills are your fight skills, then I don't think that's great. I don't think that's great. So I'm very happy with basically fighting, shooting. You're done. That's it. Athletics is fine. Like, I don't know, awareness is fine. I don't know if you would split awareness and investigation. I guess I kind of get it. But anyway, it's basically fine. Sabotage is a weird skill, but sure. Maybe I would have just called it security and wrapped up some investigation things. So when you have it this way, it's okay. I think I would have just made it an even 10 maybe, or 12. 13's a little weird. I don't know the dot spread on that. So I would have got even fewer and made them overlap a little more clearly. So when you have this few skills, you're going to have overlap, and that's perfectly fine. If a character pitches to me how they're fixing their car with fight, I'll listen. Or better yet, if a character pitches to me that their skill in survival will help them fix a car they've discovered like in the middle of the desert, because they know there's like, a dead rat stuck in the carburetor, that's a great use of a skill. I will allow a roll for that. So I think fewer skills could be interesting in that it will allow for more creative play, and it means that we have less skill sinks. Like, for an effective combat character, you had to dump all these goddamn points in way too many skills. Now you can be okay at combat or great at combat and be good at other things too. You can have a whole character, right? Not just the murder hobo. All right, so clan traits, merits. Okay, so the discipline spread. So what I have to say is that I prefer Zemisei with Auspex. I don't think Zemisei should have Dominate. I think Dominate... I think the clans that have Dominate are fine. I don't think Zemisei should be one of them. I think Auspex is much more interesting for Zemisei than Dominate. Animalism is fine for them. So like Auspex, Animalism, and Vicissitude is kind of their classic package that I love, and it makes for an interesting clan. I think Dominate is kind of a power set that really doesn't fit the Zemisei vibe, in my opinion. Using a power to make people do what you want seems kind of beneath them, I guess. That's really kind of like La Sombra, Ventru, Tremere business, right? Not having the aura for people just to do what you say, that you have to use a power to make them do what you say. It's, like I said, it's very cringe. It's very basic. It's not the kind of thing a Zemisei would do. That's a bit of a tangent, but it is what it is. So these are mostly fine. I don't know why you would keep Oblivion when Obteneration is such a better name. It's not a great name, but it's way better than Oblivion. Oblivion's a shit name. But I'm okay. Telergy, I don't think is a good name. That's a very kind of like D&D ass name. I'm not a fan. I think it sucks. So yeah, Telergy's a very D&D-ass name. I would change it to, and just because basically anything else. It sucks. It's worse than Oblivion somehow. But that's neither here nor there. Corruption's a little weird. I don't know. Presence but evil is a little weird. I don't know. This is playtest. That definitely feels like something you're gonna see in the playtest and then never see again. I don't know if the powers are super cool. They look just like Path of Corruption from old school Vampire, like literally one for one Path of Corruption, which is a very problematic power anyway. Like I remember that level 1 corruption power. Boy, what was it called? Contradict. That was like the bane of your existence in LARPs forever. So like that's not a power I would be very happy to see back actually, because it was just a busted ass fucked up power. So I'm curious how that's gonna work out. It's a little interesting that Lasombra and Sadites get it. It's a kind of a different conception of Lasombra, but it could be cool. It could be cool. It would be interesting for the Lasombra to not have Dominate and have Corruption instead. That could be kind of cool, actually. That kind of Dominate Potence combo that Lasombra and Giovanni traditionally think. Oh yeah, Giovanni with Auspex. What is that about? So Giovanni, you're looking at Auspex, Necromancy, and what's their last power? Potence. Auspex, Potence, Necromancy. That's really weird. Why would you do that? Like, Giovanni would Dominate, Potence, Necromancy. If you're going to bring the Giovanni back, just bring him back. Like, why fuck around with this? I guess they wanted them in the Auspex category, and maybe they felt there were too many people in Dominate. I mean, just take the Zemese out. That solves the problem. Swap Giovanni and Zemese there. Boom. Anyway, it is fine. Nothing really blows my mind too much. Definitely what I would say this feels like is the designers of the system were very familiar with V5. And they rejected V5's lore and obviously its mechanical changes. And they wanted to kind of go back to V20, but it's very clear they're not that familiar with V20. So you have some choices here which are clearly the V5 version of these clans. So that's the V5 version of Giovanni. Auspex, Potence, Necromancy. Another thing, Ravnos. Ravnos here have Presence, Telergy, Obfuscate, and that's it. So, yeah, Telergy, Presence, Obfuscate. So, Ravnos originally were Animalism, Fortitude, and Chemistry. So, no Animalism, no Fortitude. The Obfuscate, Presence, Ravnos, that is a complete V5 invention. I should know. You can't blame me for that Discipline package, but I know how it came about. So that's a complete V5 invention. Because of the amalgams, it was decided that Obfuscate Presence would be conceptually the best way for Chemistry to be modeled. And so Ravnos got Obfuscate Chemistry. Let's look at Salubri. They should be Auspex, Fortitude, and their personal power. But no, they have Obfuscate, which is, yet again, very strange. Obfuscate, not a classic Salubri power. So it is a little weird. Gangrel gets Celerity since Protean is now subsumed into Animalism. But yeah, so it's a little weird. It's almost like the V5 clans have been imported into like a V20 setting. So I'm not 100% sold on those changes. If you're gonna go back to V20 on a lore basis, I would say that the clans should in a sense reset. Um, because the reasons those clans were modified were based on V5 design and lore choices. Um, the merits, all the merits are very powerful. I'm not going to go through them all, but my understanding is you can buy merits throughout throughout. You can buy them with experience points. Um, and they're very powerful. They activate and they do something like kind of crazy. I don't think they have passive bonuses, but some stuff that used to be discipline powers are now in merits, and some of them have discipline prerequisites, which is a little strange. So I think for clan merits and merits, for clan traits and merits, I think what they're trying to do here is interesting. I wouldn't clan lock them, and if you're going to discipline lock them, then you might as well just do that. So why not just make merits that modify disciplines, so they have nothing to do with your clan, right? So if you have animalism, you can get bond familius, and the same with the clan traits. So some of the clan traits are like, you can break stuff, like you're better at breaking stuff, and I think that's like locked behind Bruja. And like Ventru has rationalize, which is a clan trait now. So when they dominate people, that person thinks it's their own idea, right? They kind of subconsciously rationalize its own idea. I think that should just be a discipline merit. That should not be locked behind Clan Ventru. I don't think that's a great idea. I think that kind of turns the clans into character classes, which is not really what you want from Vampire the Masquerade, right? I should be picking a clan based on like its vibe, its aura, and all that, and the kind of character I want to play. Like if I want to play a like sniveling weasel who's always trying to like who's always trying to like brown nose the people in charge, so I can get like a crumb, an iota of power, then I'll play Tremere. I'm not going to play a Tremere because like they throw fireballs better, or I shouldn't. I'm sorry. There's no wrong way to play, but if you're only interested in Tremere is they throw fireballs the best, I don't think that's great. I think the lore and kind of embodying the clans as a character can be interesting, and you can either embody that clan or push against it. So you could be a virtuous Tremere. I've played kind of a social, sexy Tremere who wasn't good at magic, right? Who was able to like climb the ladder within their chantry just by schmoozing and having connections to other clans that the other Tremere couldn't get because they were, farting in their library all day, all night. So that could be fun, but if you adopt clan traits, then you can never optimize that character in a meaningful way, because none of the clan traits will align with your focus for the character. And, in some way, those kind of predetermined paths to power for the clans are already in their disciplines. All right, so I mean that's the main change I would make there. And then humanity and your nature. Okay, so I have a lot to say about humanity and the nature system here. So I'm going to stop now because my cat, even though she's relaxing right now before the shovel, seems to need something from me, and I can't ignore her any longer. But this system, I see some potential in the nature system. The humanity system, and I'll go through it. I do not think it's a good fit for Vampire the Masquerade. Obviously, I think V5's humanity touchstone conviction system was mechanically very elegant and interesting, and allows you to do lots of interesting things, especially when you combine it with like chronicle tenets and the stains and all that. It was just like a deep, interesting system that enforced play without, getting in your way. There was a little bit of work up front with designing the convictions, deciding on chronicle tenants, and then, syncing touchstones and all that. So a little bit of work up front, but in play, during play, very smooth, very elegant. This is not elegant. It's not smooth. I would say this is kind of this weird ping pong tracker is the way I've heard it described, and I feel that's about right for humanity. I don't think it's a good fit for Vampire the Masquerade. Don't know if this is something that can be fixed or perfected, and I don't think it's really worth the effort to fix or perfect it. As I've said, we have many systems to choose from. Even V20's dog shit humanity system feels like Vampire the Masquerade, right? It's about degradation. It's about the beast and whatever the beast means to you. The beast as something which is like pulling you down and stripping you of your humanity and your identity. And that appeasing the beast can be a short-term solution, but in the long term fucks you over. So this system has really no long term. This system is this system models a short-term balancing act of the beast, like appeasing it and pushing back against it, like back and forth. So it models this like tug of war, but it is an even fight. So it models a tug of war between you and the beast, but neither of you really has like the advantage. And if you just game the beast, you're going to be okay. And the beast in some sense has like no agency. The beast is a system you are playing against on your sheet. And very rarely is the storyteller going to be able to insert themselves into the situation mechanically to basically force the beast upon you. So it's kind of an overcorrection of player agency in the part of the game that is specifically about losing control and specifically about the fact that you're a monster. So at the end of the day, Vampire the Masquerade, you are playing a monster. And what that means in your game or to you, that's all up for interpretation. But a monster means something that's inhuman. And so the monster has to come out. And the monster has to push you to do things that you are uncomfortable with. Or it's not a monster. And so I feel the humanity system here, that's where it fails. Is that it's modeling the tug of war without modeling long-term consequences, degradation, or the power of the beast over you now that you're a blood-drinking monster. But I'll talk about that a bit more and get into the Vitae system. Well, thanks for all your time. I have to run, but it was great chatting with you, and I will upload this on YouTube. Praise King.